Hey everyone, welcome back to Admix for another episode of our podcast. Today, Ian and I are going to talk about gamer motivation.
Mm-hmm.
How is it going?
It is going well. How are you?
Great, all good. I'm really excited. This is I like talking about the psychology of games specifically, so I'm looking forward to see what you have in store for us.
That's good. Motivation is such an important thing, isn't it? Because everyone who plays games and plays games a lot, they don't necessarily understand why they're playing. They can sort of say why they like certain games. Like I like Dark Souls because it's challenging, but they can't put it into the science terms. So I thought we'd go over that today and put all of that experience into the actual language they use. And this is, to clarify, this is like $1 billion subject as well, because the mobile companies like Zynga or King or even Supercell, they all use gamer motivation, and they use everything we're going to talk about today to keep you playing. And not only to keep you playing, but to keep you spending money and to keep you invested and spreading it to other people. It's incredibly powerful.
And it's actually not only limited to games. A lot of the triggers and psychology and motivation that we'll talk about actually can be applied to pretty much every product. It's obviously a lot more obvious in games because you're designing for this metric specifically. But look at Facebook's design or any social network, any product. You can also use some element of this. Triggers and really understanding your customer at the end of the day definitely helps with retention. So if you're a product manager or designer, whatever you are doing, even if it's not in game specifically, pay attention because there's going to be a lot of knowledge being dropped over the next 20 minutes or so.
Exactly. It's also worth saying that motivation doesn't necessarily mean fun. So, it kind of means fun. There's a sort of gray line between being motivated to do something and being behaviorally addicted to do something. We're trying to lean on the fun side today because we've spoken about psychological tricks previously. We're sort of trying to find the territory where people are actually like they're pushing themselves to do it instead of feeling like they have to, feeling like they're addicted to it. And the first major model we want to talk about in that space, because it's sort of the foundation for everything we're going to talk about today, is self-determination theory. And this is a comprehensive piece of psychological work, not about games specifically, that tries to break down why humans do what they do. And they distinguish between three basic human needs that are just hardwired into our brains. And if they're met, or if we think something will help to meet them, we will want to do that thing. So let's go through them. Competence is the first one, which is the need to feel good at something, to become a master of something, to feel successful, like you're progressing and you're developing as a human being. It's really motivational in games like in fighting games and rhythm games and a lot of hyper-casual titles where they are very explicit about saying you've won, you've done a good job, you've got a high score, stuff like that. The second factor is autonomy, which is the need to feel like you're in control of your actions and that your choices matter. In games, in free roaming games like Skyrim, this is a really big one. In games where you have a lot of customization, like Animal Crossing or Matchington Mansion in the mobile space, also great examples. And then the third key factor is relatedness, and this is the need to be cared for and to care for others. It's your interpersonal need. It's about belonging somewhere and knowing that you matter socially. Dating sims do this really well. Any game with heavy social elements like VR chat or Game of War. You also get this from NPCs. So a lot of story-driven games and narrative-driven games and choose-your-own adventures. This can trigger relatedness in people. So off the bat here, Sam, is there one of these categories that you're more drawn to as a person?
I think autonomy, which I kind of attach to creativity as well. It's the freedom to not only follow one storyline, but actually being able to create things within the game. And as you said, making choices, whatever you want to do. And this is why I think simulations like Second Life, for example, where obviously they appeal to relatedness as well, but these kind of games where there's not much of a storyline and you have free to do a lot of things is quite exciting. You get to build things, sell things, kind of create your own life or business within the game itself. And I think that's always something that I thought was quite exciting to replicate in the digital world.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's obviously a huge pull of Minecraft as well as a game.
Massively,
creative like that. I'm personally drawn between autonomy and competence. I like building things, like Bridge Constructor is a great game in that sense, Minecraft, Besieged. But I also have a weird addiction to fighting games and rhythm games, which is sad because I'm not very good at them. So yeah, it's an unfortunate cycle that I've got myself into. So then self-determination theory then actually further breaks those categories down into extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation are triggered by the anticipation of a reward, like being paid to do your job, or like loyalty cards, going to one coffee shop because eventually you'll get a free one. Yeah, in games, these are things like achievements or quest rewards or daily rewards in a lot of free-to-play titles, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Intrinsic motivation comes from inside yourself. You do the thing because you just want to do the thing. It reflects your desires. This is stuff that will make you feel good without being rewarded for it. So socializing or watching TV are good examples. In games, you might be led by curiosity to make you explore or click on something, or you might want to join a clan in an MMO because you just find playing with people more fun. Often games will lean more towards one of these as a motivational factor, but they apply to all of the categories. You'll often find both in a lot of games. Yeah, it's very important to try and find the balance and find which one appeals to your player set. So, to further complicate things, the same game and the same physical experience might motivate different players differently. So if you're playing a game like Rocket League, which is very social and also very challenging and competitive, one person on one team might be playing just because they want to play with other people and they enjoy playing with other people. Another person might be playing because they want the level up rewards, the daily rewards. Another person might be playing because they find it challenging and fun and just wanting to get better at the game. It's a complicated area, but it's important to try and figure out what your game appeals, what about your game is appealing to its players.
It's quite interesting to design for not only for the feature, but for the player, right? And the same feature, the same mechanic, the same element of the game could be designed in different ways to appeal to different people. Some people would be motivated by the reward, some just because it's fun. And by really understanding these two things, then you can attract the right users to your game.
Exactly. That's another question, isn't it? So, Sam, do you feel like, from your personal experience, are you more drawn by intrinsic motivations or extrinsic motivations?
I would say it's kind of a combination. Like for me, the extrinsic is really just about the reward, and intrinsic is more about the journey. So for example, when you are as the founder of a startup, if you are only motivated by the exit or selling the company, which would be an extrinsic motivator, this is not going to be enough, because there are probably better ways to make money in the short term. It's very nothing's guaranteed, right, in the early days. So if you're purely motivated by the reward, and the reward takes 7 to 10 years to come, that's a bit difficult. So you have to love the process. So definitely understanding what makes you tick, and just celebrating successes and the thrill of things grow and growing the team is more of an intrinsic motivator. So I would say that most of my motivations are mainly intrinsic, with of course the view that in the future that could turn into something more extrinsic, more tangible.
I think the reality is that everyone falls onto a spectrum of which one matters to them more. I lean more towards intrinsic as well, quite a ways into intrinsic as well. If I don't really want to do something, I struggle to do it. In games, it's weirdly flipped a little bit. I find achievement hunting and reward seeking for quests really engaging and fun. I like 100% completing things. I like getting rare rewards. The Final Fantasy rare materia and stuff like that's really appealing to me. I don't know why. And in reality, it's useful to know which one triggers your motivational parts of your brain, because then you can know how to force yourself to complete a task that you maybe don't want to do. If you really don't want to code today, for example, setting an extrinsic reward for yourself, if that is something that works for you, might be really useful. If you need an intrinsic reason, you have to try a different route. It's this sort of language that helps you really understand yourself and work in a way that benefits you, that you don't have if you don't read about it.
Would you say that extrinsic motivation is maybe more, we talk about white hats, which are like kind of the positing drivers, and black hats, which are more the fear of missing out and all the appealing to our negative emotions, a bit like gambling. Would you say that extrinsic is mostly motivated by this black hat? For example, I'm thinking of, most people hate their jobs. The reason they do it is because they get paid. That's 100% extrinsic motivator. But some of them do like their job, and they're even willing sometimes to take a pay cut to take a job that is more exciting. And that's intrinsic motivation. So do you think that there is examples of extrinsic motivators that are positive, and vice versa, also intrinsic motivators that are negative?
I think that there probably are. Frustratingly, the examples that spring to mind are inherently negative. Which I suppose benefits the point. If you're motivated intrinsically to make someone cry because you enjoy seeing people cry, that's incredibly negative. But still, it's still driven by internal wants and desires. Equally, an extrinsic motivation that is probably more noble might apply to a lot of creative careers. So a lot of artists that I know, for example, they don't get paid much in a lot of cases because there's not that much money in art, unfortunately. But they can't take just free work either. So the extrinsic motivation does lead them to do jobs that they don't necessarily want to do for not that much money, but it's still important because it's letting them do something that they do care about and they do like crafting, but they wouldn't be making that thing unless they were being rewarded for it. It's
it's a blurry, it's a bit of a gray area, right? Because if you're an artist, it might feel, the motivation of painting something or sculpting something is intrinsic, right? You want to create something that you like, but the outcome of it is maybe why they did it in the first place, to create something nice, which is also most extrinsic as well. So sometimes it's quite hard to figure out, I guess, the line between the two, and it happens in games as well. These two motivations are very, very linked, and it's very rare that specific mechanic will only apply to one or the other.
Absolutely. So it's probably good to talk about the next model, because then we start to break down things through that. So the self-determination theory has been translated into games directly via the player experience of need satisfaction model, which is a wordy thing. We're going to call it PENS, because that's a lot easier to say. The team behind the model wanted to basically say why players do what they do. A lot of theories applying to games in the past, before this one, were all about what players did, and they suggested that that's studying motivation, basically watching players say 80% of people did this quest and we can assume it's because of X reward, but no one really broke it down psychologically. PENS tried to. They wanted to really understand the motivational light box, as they call it, as to why we do what we do. A huge part of this, by the way, is for them was not only finding out why we do what we do, but why we identify ourselves as certain things. And they thought motivation was part of that. For example, I don't just play League of Legends. I am a League of Legends player. That is part of my identity. That's an example out of nowhere because I don't actually play League of Legends.
And why do you think, how do you think that happens? What makes people identify to specific games and not to another?
Exactly. I think the model proposes that it's the games that trigger are your specific mix of motivational needs are the ones that will immerse you in them and really make you keep coming back. And some of those needs are more important than others. And we'll go through that in a second. At least some of them are stronger motivators of high retention players. But it's so individual, to be honest. Everyone has their own set of needs, and like a Tamagotchi, except more complicated. And different games will appeal to your set of needs more so than others, and those are the ones that you'll keep coming back to. Some games won't motivate you, won't tick all of your boxes at all, and maybe you're not such a committed player. It's there's a lot of further research that can build out of this. It's crazy. But anyway, let's go break down those 3 previous motivational needs based on what Penn's said in the world of games. Starting with competence, and we're going to start giving tips here on how you can design for these as well. So competence is the challenge is creating a game that's easy to learn but very hard to master, because you don't want people to be alienated in the first few levels. You want to draw people in, and you want them to realize that this is something that I can really get better at, and that this will really make me enjoy the game. But you don't want to make it seem too easy either, because then they just won't care. So, example, fighting games let you fight easy mode characters, or Guitar Hero is an easy difficulty. You want to ease people up, essentially. There was a psychologist that I'm not even going to try to name. It's a complicated name.
His first name.
Mihaly. God, it's. I don't want to.
17 letters in there.
Yeah, Mihaly, I believe is the name. Very famous. He created he coined the term flow and the flow state, which you probably have heard of before. It's something that you get in rapping and any other skill-based task. It's when you're so immersed in an action that you just stop thinking about it. It's when your ability matches the difficulty of the task. And as your ability gets bigger, the task has to get bigger as well, so that you're constantly keeping players in this flow state. So your difficulty curve is incredibly important. You want to make someone feel like they're constantly improving. Always challenge them, but also try and match their skill level, or at least try and always be slightly ahead of their skill level.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very challenging one to design for, and it's why there are a lot of fighting games and skill-based games that don't necessarily take off, really, because the curve doesn't fit any player.
I guess it's a fine line between being boring and being too hard, right? So
exactly.
It's that kind of level in between, that flow, effectively. Yeah. That is really, you have to keep the user between these two boundaries. Otherwise, either they give up or they just think that this is too boring.
Of course. A lot of these skill-based games, competency games, are they rely on intrinsic motivation, like almost completely, because it is an intrinsic. It's something that you assume is more intrinsic than anything else. A lot of modern fighting games, as an example, because I know fighting games, they are playing with extrinsic rewards more. And extrinsic rewards in this space will mean things like level up rewards or cosmetics. This is something that Soul Calibur's done for a while. But in other genres, you can give competency-based extrinsic rewards through really difficult quest unlockables. Again, Final Fantasy X, lightning dodging is something that's very difficult and annoying and time-consuming, but you're doing it and you're getting competent at it because you want that reward. Generally, you'll want to focus on the difficulty curve. If your game is a competency-focused game, like a fighting game, you want to really focus on the difficulty curve, reflect that in gameplay, keep players engaged through that focus on intrinsic motivation, but acknowledge extrinsic as well. Have those rewards, have that progress, because that will really broaden your audience. Then there is autonomy. Autonomy is obviously all about choice. Giving players the freedom to do what they want is great if you're making like a huge open world like Skyrim, but that's very expensive. It's very, very expensive. There are other ways to do it. There's the illusion of choice, which is made by giving a player two choices that both lead to the same option. It gives a sense of autonomy, but players will hate it if they know it, if they can see it. People don't like being lied to at all. It makes it seem shallow. So be careful if you're doing that. Player customization is one of the easiest ways to give a sense of autonomy. Just letting people put on a hat, for example, will really trigger this. Skins. A lot, it's no surprise that a lot of the biggest games out there right now either have a lot of character choice where you can create strategy, or customization options where you can just make something your own.
And it's something that hyper casual, for example, to some extent really lack. A lot of them are trying to, sometimes reuse the same level, but with different colors or different characters to kind of pretend like this is new, and that you have some kind of level of choice and creativity, while effectively everything is scripted. And even the games that are, storyline based games where you can make a decision, generally end up going into the same place, or even leading to the same monetization tactic.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, even with hyper casual games, there's so first of all, autonomy is the most important factor for having high retention players. People love having creative freedom so much and general choice freedom so much that they will keep playing. Hyper casual games maybe don't need to design for that, because their business model isn't to keep people playing, it's to monetize them fast and move them on. I think it's definitely going to be a huge factor in the what we've called hybrid casual games, where hyper casual is going to get higher retention players and really monetize them further from that. This will be a big part of it, having that choice element, but that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, I think if you look at the have a mental model of this flow that you mentioned, right, where you have, on top you have this line of difficulty, and you don't want to be too difficult, and then you have the kind of line of boredom. You don't want to be too boring. You have to stay in the middle. You have competency. I think would kind of drag this line higher. The more mechanics there is, the more gameplay there is, the more competent you need to be. And then autonomy kind of pushes the back one by creating more opportunity to effectively be a more exciting game, a less boring game. And this is how that flow state kind of ends up going up by mitigating the difference between autonomy on one end and competency on the other.
Absolutely. Having freedom of action and choice is a big part in competency as well. So there is a lot of overlap. Autonomy is one that's very easy to design for both intrinsic and extrinsic motivations as well. We should know. If you give players the option to customize their characters, for example, they'll do it because they want to. But if you give them the option of earning hats or abilities or something like that, then that's meeting both boxes quite nicely. This is also a huge appeal of MOBAs, which are super popular and highly engaging, having that choice of strategy and choice of character and choice of build as well. There's a big reason autonomy is the real huge one you want if you're trying to create a high retention game. Lastly is relatedness, which is obviously the social focused one. Game of War, Fire Age, the success of that game is absolutely driven by the social elements. It is, gameplay loop-wise, immersive and addictive in its own ways, but the social element and the social pressure of not only wanting to do right by your clan, but by defeating another clan with real people, that's really huge. It's really ticking that social box. But it doesn't need other humans to have a successful game. A lot of role-playing games, the relatedness a person feels to their character or to non-playable characters who are written well that can trigger this immensely. That is potentially all you need to click this. Like Stardew Valley, there is a competency element to the game. There's a huge autonomy element to the game, but there's also a huge relatedness element, and the game would be completely different without it. There's an intrinsic motivation of trying to do right by those characters and just being around the characters. There's also an extrinsic one if you need to give the characters rewards or do quests for them. You can also introduce relatedness elements in games that you wouldn't expect it in. Dark Souls has a really fun relatedness element in the messages on the floor, and players love it. Players talk about it. Players leave messages of their own volition, and reading them is fun. It really enhances the gameplay. But it's good to try not to make relatedness an extrinsic motivation. It kind of cheapens it when you're given a present for talking to someone. It doesn't really reflect the real world, and I think players feel that. Ideally, invest in your writing team and make talking to that character its own reward, and that will really help with players who relate to autonomy, relate to relatedness. I mean,
I think what's quite interesting as well is if you look at the history of gaming over time, competency was kind of like the main driver. It's always been there. It was always about finishing the level, beating the boss. That's always been there, even with arcade gaming. And then consoles really introduce autonomy, where especially 3D games, right? Instead of having the 2D platformer where you can just go back and forth, now you are free to start exploring things and building things and really have this kind of creative freedom. And then mobile really brought relatedness. Well, I guess World of Warcraft and other platforms before, but really it exploded when mobile gaming exploded and you had the ability to play against other people. So in a way, while these three things are very important now, they were kind of stacked one after the other in the history of gamings. And it's interesting to think that maybe there is a fourth motivator that will be part of the next generation of consoles.
I find it interesting that you can sort of see symptoms of each other motivation structure in previous iterations. Like Super Mario. Super Mario, for example, is highly competency focused, but you have this weird relatedness to Mario. You sort of build your own story, even with the limited amount of text you get from Princess Peach and stuff like that. People were really experiencing relatedness, not enough to keep playing the game or anything like that. It was still a competency-based game, but you can see the need for it. I think if we're going to try and identify the next motivator for the future of games, possibly in the XR space, it's probably already present. There's probably already a need for it somewhere in our psychology or in our behavior.
Absolutely. I think it would be something around, presence, which is a little bit kind of a blend between maybe autonomy and relatedness, but it's also really feeling that you are a part of something and not just looking at the action from the outside. I think that would probably be the fourth motivator. How strong that is and how to design for it, that's another story.
Yeah, a whole other story. Possibly something we'll get to. But to wrap this up, a few key takeaways. So understanding what motivates your players is super important. You need to figure out the basic need that your game is closest to. And you can always boil it down to something like competence in a rhythm game or a hyper casual game. And you should try and design with that in mind. Use other motivational structures to broaden your audience and broaden the people who will keep playing your game. But it's good to know what you do well and do it really well instead of doing everything at once. Have an understanding of intrinsic and extrinsic motivations and try and balance them a little bit. If you do one thing too much, you might be alienating another whole subset of your audience, But of course, you can't tick every motivational need. So if you want to focus more on extrinsic rewards or intrinsic rewards, do it. Lean into what you do and do it really well. But it's also super important to be careful of exploiting players by making it feel like you're just tricking them with motivational hacks. If you're using motivational design to get in-app purchases through giving this false sense of autonomy, people will notice eventually. people always notice when they're being tricked.
Yeah. As we always say, it's all the stuff that we discuss here is super important, but the story, the gameplay, the design has to come first. While you need to infuse those learnings as part of your design, it should never take over the actual gameplay itself, because at the end of the day, people are playing for one reason, which is to distract themselves, to have fun. And if you try to over-engineer the mechanics, it will just come off as not really genuine and probably a game that is not very fun to play.
No, absolutely. Always build a good game, and then enhance it through psychology. At the end of the day, if your core gameplay loop isn't fun, then you're going to have trouble doing everything else.
Core loop, that's probably should be the topic of one of our next discussions.
It really should. Very important. And I think that's our bit on motivation in games.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ian. Thank you guys for following, and we'll see you next week for another episode.
Goodbye.